Hi there, it's Mary here with another Random Facts. Now, as always, I found more information than I really have time to share, but I really wanted to get this out there, and it is a Random Facts about St. Patrick's Day, so let's just get into it. To celebrate St. Patrick's Day, 110 million people will celebrate the day by wearing green, making an Irish-inspired meal, or going out to celebrate. 15 million cards are exchanged on St. Patrick's Day, and 10% of all St. Patrick's Day cards are sold in New York. St. Patrick's Day is a national holiday in both Ireland and Northern Ireland. St. Patrick was born to Roman parents in either Scotland or Wales in the late 4th century. So St. Patrick himself is not Irish at all, even though it is believed that he was kidnapped when he was around 16 and put into slavery in Ireland. And then he escaped and became a priest and went back to Ireland. He himself is not Irish. He also was never ordained as a saint. In that time period, he didn't have to be. St. Patrick's real name is Maewyn Succat. Sorry if I mispronounced that. Maewyn adopted the name Patricus, or Patrick. I've also seen Palladius, which means well-born in Latin. The only name St. Patrick used for himself in his own writings is Patricius, which gives Old Irish Padraig and Modern Irish Padraig, English Patrick, Welsh Padrig, and Cornish Patroc. So all those languages all come down to translating to English as Patrick. Sure, we all know there are many languages where we have different versions of basically the same name. Bringing Catholicism to Ireland is what makes St. Patrick Ireland's patron saint. And like I said, he was not actually ordained as a saint by the Pope. In that time period, they didn't do it that way, and any priest could ordain another priest, apparently. Just a little side factoid. St. Patrick is a hero in Ireland, and about 60 churches and cathedrals are named for him just in Ireland, not including any of the other ones in the world. 60 churches and cathedrals. In Ireland, St. Patrick's Day is a religious holiday similar to Christmas and Easter. It's actually held on the anniversary of St. Patrick's death, and in the Catholic religion is considered St. Patrick's feast day. For most of the 20th century, St. Patrick's Day was considered to be a strictly religious holiday in Ireland, which meant the nation's pubs were closed on March 17th. In 1970, the day was converted to a national holiday and alcohol sales were permitted. So, St. Patrick's Day used to be a dry holiday. Now there's an exception coming up. The Irish Kennel Club was founded by a group of dog owners who separated from the English Kennel Club system over which breeds should be included in shows. Their version of an independence movement. They began having their show annually on St. Patrick's Day in 1922. The 2015 show, which is still held on St. Patrick's Day, featured 1,700 dogs and 186 different dog breeds, all collected at a show hall in Dublin. The beer vendors at the big national dog show have always been permitted to sell alcohol. So if you wanted a beer, go to the dog show, right? Until the 20th century, pork was significantly cheaper to raise and therefore to eat. The average family in Ireland, for the average family in Ireland, then beef was. Beef was very expensive to raise and buy as a result. So corned beef is historically unheard of in Ireland, although salt-cured beef was an occasional meal. Eating corned beef didn't start until late in the 19th century. Irish immigrants would buy corned beef from Jewish delis in New York City instead of the more common, or at least in Ireland, St. Patrick's Day meat of cured pork, such as ham or bacon. And if you really think about it, potatoes, I know a lot of us associate with potatoes with the Irish, but the potatoes did come from the New World. So if you really go back to it, not really that traditional, but they are delicious, so eat them up anyway. A 2012 estimate of the total amount spent on beer for St. Patrick's Day celebrations was $245 million, and that's before tipping the bartender and or waitstaff. And remember to always tip your bartender. Now, I have mentioned this in previous videos. I don't drink alcohol. I just don't. But I do sometimes go to bars with my friends or to see a band or something. And even when I just get water, I tip my bartender. I'm still taking their time. And in a lot of the service positions, such as waitstaff and bartenders, they are paid less hourly with the assumption they will receive tips. So even more of a reason to make sure you always tip your bartender. And doing so will usually make them a little kinder to you and more likely to actually serve you when you're going up there and it's busy. For another drink, the minty green shamrock shake from McDonald's has become an all-American tradition. It was either invented in 1966 by Harold Rawson, a franchise owner in Connecticut, or in 1970 by the corporation itself, depending on who you ask. The limited time milkshakes are not only enormously popular, but also have a connection to their high profile charity, the Ronald McDonald House, which has done so much good to help families when going through some tough times medically. In 1974, McDonald's held a week-long promotion during which all proceeds from milkshake sales would go towards a fundraiser for the Philadelphia Eagles football player Fred Hill, who was undergoing treatment for leukemia. The result of the fundraiser was a house near the hospital, which became the first in the network of Ronald McDonald Houses. To commemorate the shake's affiliation with the nonprofit, a ceremonial world's largest shake was dumped in the Chicago River in both 2010 and 2011. Green is associated with St. Patrick's Day because it is the color of spring, of Ireland, especially the Catholic part of Ireland, and of the shamrock. So for those who, I found out recently, somebody who I thought would know this didn't realize that the Irish flag is green, white, and orange. The green is to represent the Catholic Irish, the orange is to represent the Protestant Irish. I know a lot of people assume Irish are all Catholic, but they're not. And the white is actually to represent the hope that someday the two factions will find peace and an understanding with each other, which I think is a beautiful sentiment, and I truly hope that that happens. In Ireland throughout the 17th and 18th centuries, wearing green was a sign, seen as a sign of Irish pride as a political act. The color was used during the Great Irish Rebellion of 1641, and at one point Queen Victoria banned the green shamrock as an emblem for Irish troops in the British Army. But during the American Revolution, Irish soldiers serving with the British Army had more freedom to wear green, sing Irish songs, and embrace their culture and heritage. On St. Patrick's Day, 1762, they led a parade through New York City past the old St. Patrick's Cathedral, and the tradition continued annually, led by the military until after the War of 1812, then organized by Irish fraternal societies. Today, hundreds of thousands of revelers march along the same route. The color of St. Patrick himself was St. Patrick's blue, a light shade. The color green only became associated with the holiday after it was linked to the Irish independence movement in the late 18th century. The saint has also been used by British powers when Ireland was a kingdom belonging to Britain. In 1783, George III of England created the Most Illustrious Order of the Knights of St. Patrick. It was an order of chivalry, with Irish nobles swearing loyalty to the king to be granted the knighthood, and its featured color was blue rather than green. And one of the most famous recipients was Prince Albert of Saxe-Coburg-Gotha, who was the husband of Queen Victoria. After Ireland gained independence from Great Britain in 1921, the creation of the Knights basically ended. The order still exists today and is headed by Queen Elizabeth II, but the last surviving knight died in 1974, so it still continues today in name only, I believe. There are 10,000 three-leaf clovers for every one four-leaf clover. This is a transition intentionally. Even though shamrocks have 3 leaves, there's no historical evidence that St. Patrick used it as a symbol to demonstrate Christianity, which the tale goes that he used it to teach about the Holy Trinity, the Father, the Son, and the Holy Ghost. In fact, it's unlikely he introduced Christianity to the Emerald Isle at all. In the 5th century AD, the Pope sent Palladius, aka St. Patrick, to Ireland with the mission of preaching to the Irish believing in Christ. So he didn't introduce Christianity to Ireland, he just kind of helped it along. Palladius may have used the shamrock to represent the Holy Trinity, but the shamrock already may have had symbolic significance in pagan traditions as well. Green was an important color to paganism because it represented rebirth, and the number 3 was a staple of paganism as well as Christianity. Many pagan religions have 3 primary gods. I want to make sure you saw the thumb instead of just the 2 fingers. And as I said, even with that, it's a maybe because I've seen sources saying that there are historians that don't find any proof in that either. So maybe it's just a fun shenanigans thing to claim that the shamrock was used for symbolism. Now we're going to get on to leprechauns, which were actually fairies and shoemakers. There are no female leprechauns. In traditional Irish folk tales, only nattily attired males are present. Also, leprechauns earned the gold that they are guarding. According to legend, leprechauns spend their days making and mending shoes. So they actually earned that gold. How dare you want to steal that gold from them? They earned it. But leprechauns and St. Patrick's Day aren't actually related, other than the fact that they are both of Irish origin. Leprechauns weren't a staple of Irish literature until many years after St. Patrick's famed journey through Ireland. So I guess we just kind of use them as an excuse to celebrate Irish culture. I'm not sure. Unfortunately, St. Patrick's Day has been known to now build up a lot of misconceptions about Irish culture, including the over-drinking. It's a socio-stereotype. It may be true for some, it may not be true for others, but... Now, another thing St. Patrick was claimed to have done is drive the snakes out of Ireland. I wanted to make me Scottish there for a second. So according to the fossil record, Ireland has never been home to any snakes. Through the Ice Age, Ireland was too cold to host any reptiles, and the surrounding seas have kept the serpents away. Modern scholars think that the snakes St. Patrick drove away were likely metaphorical, which I tend to go on their side with that one. In 2008, around 36 million Americans claimed Irish ancestry. At the same time, the population of Ireland was only 4 million. Of course, as we all know, not everyone who claims Irish ancestry is fully Irish. For the longest time, I would swear up and down I had 0 Irish. My parents took one of those DNA tests, which aren't always accurate, and on my dad's side, I think I have like 0.1%. So I'm not actually Irish. I don't usually wear green for St. Patrick's Day. I usually wear orange because I was raised in a Protestant church. This year I think I'm going to wear blue when I actually go out. But, yeah, basically a little bit of Irish will go a long way apparently in the States. Irish Presbyterians, however, were the largest immigration group to arrive in the American colonies in the 1700s. And it's estimated that at least 1/4 of the Continental Army soldiers were Irish by birth or ancestry. During the brutal winter of 1779 to 1780, General George Washington organized St. Patrick's Day festivities in Morristown, New Jersey for his weather-beaten troops. This wasn't the only time the holiday played a role in the Revolutionary War. In 1776, when British troops and loyalists withdrew from Boston Harbor after an 11-month siege, Washington set the password and countersignal for re-entry into the city as Boston and St. Patrick's Day. Actually, apparently had relatives who fought in that war. Starting as early as the 18th century, drinking was much more of a fixture in American celebrations of St. Patrick's Day. In the early 1900s, drinking green beer instead of the normal amber potion started becoming a part of the festivities in the United States. But the term may have caused some confusion at first. Apparently in the late 1800s, green beer was a term for a beverage that hadn't fully finished the fermentation process, which gave it a bad taste and caused stomach upset. So hopefully they were drinking something with dye in it, not actually green beer. The first St. Patrick's Day parade was held in Boston in 1737, not in Ireland. The largest parade in the United States has been held since 1762 in New York City and draws more than 1 million spectators each year. Over 100 U.S. cities hold a parade every year, and some of the other biggest St. Patrick's Day parades are in Chicago, Illinois, and Savannah, Georgia. In 1948, President Truman became the first U.S. president to attend a St. Patrick's Day parade. Now, New York City's St. Patrick's Day parade, which is one of the world's largest parades, apparently, so that makes it sound like not just for St. Patrick's Day, but just all the time, out of all the parades that are held in the year. 250,000 marchers have taken the path up Fifth Avenue on foot since 1762, and the parade still does not permit floats, cars, or other modern trappings. So everybody who does that parade does it purely on foot. That's a long walk, man. One feature of early St. Patrick's Day parties in America were toasts. The toasts were used to situate themselves in the politics of the day, to prove they were Americans as well as Irishmen. The very first celebration was the founding of Boston's Charitable Irish Society in 1737. As historian E. Moore Quinn writes, quote, "The pre-famine Irish honed toasts for publication in town newspapers, a strategy that succeeded in making their voices seen to a reading class of educated merchants interested in art, science, literature, and politics." End of quote. In a 1766 New York gathering, one of the toasts was, and I'm going to quote again, "Success to the Sons of Liberty in America. May they never want money, interest, nor courage to maintain their just rights." Again, end of quote. Chicago has been celebrating St. Patrick's Day by dyeing the Chicago River green since 1962. It currently takes 40 tons of dye to get the river the right shade of green. The inspiration for the stunt came from pollution control workers who used various chemical dyes to trace illegal sewage discharges. The first year, the city dumped 100 pounds of dye into the river, which left it green for an entire week. Since then, the dye has changed from an oil-based product to more environmentally friendly powdered vegetable-based dye. The amount of dye in the river was changed as well, so that the color only lasts for a few hours rather than multiple days. From 1999 to 2007, the Irish town of Dripsey hosted the shortest St. Patrick's Day parade in the world. The route ran for 23.4 meters or 26 yards between the two pubs in the town, ending when one of the pubs closed. Today, the shortest parade for St. Patrick's Day is in Hot Springs, Arkansas, and they claim the title with its brief parade running for 98 feet. In 1961, less than 1 year after gaining independence, Nigerian bishops named St. Patrick the country's patron. That was also the same year Ireland opened an embassy in Lagos. The country is home to over 20 million Catholics, some of whom are descendants of those converted by Irish priests and missionaries who first arrived in the 19th century. Although not an official holiday there are still plenty of people who reach for Guinness on St. Patrick's Day, apparently, because the country accounts for about a fifth of Guinness World sales and is the largest stout market in the world based on net sales value. the Guinness Book of World Records. I know this one isn't technically St. Patrick's Day, but it's still kind of cool, fun information. So the Guinness Book of World Records originated with the Irish native Hugh Beaver, who was the managing director of the Guinness Brewery. Hugh Beaver, over a couple of beers, he and his friends began arguing over which bird was the fastest bird in Ireland. When Beaver realized that there weren't any reference books that could answer the question, he had the idea to make a book of records that could officially settle any friendly pub arguments. And this is how the Guinness Book of World Records was created. And last one, to finish this one off, I don't know if you've heard the term before, probably have if you've gone to a pub on St. Patrick's Day, of Éireann Go Bragh, which translates roughly to Ireland forever. It's actually a corruption of the Irish term Éireann Go Bragh, spelled E with an accent aigu, IRINNGO, BRA with an accent aigu, CH. And for those who don't know what an accent aigu means, it means that the accent goes from down to up. So hopefully you learned something new. Be careful out there. There are a lot of people partying and drinking today. It is the American way to turn it into a drinking holiday, it seems. Wherever you are, be safe, be kind to each other. Try not to perpetuate stereotypes if you can, if you know any better. I'm avoiding driving today. Just keeping it on the safe side. And there are so many other options nowadays. Not just public transport, but you can Uber, Lyft, cab, taxi. There are so many options, even just walking. Or maybe you have a friend like me who stays sober regardless and would be willing to pick you up. But anyway, I hope you are all having a great day, enjoying St. Patrick's Day if you celebrate it. Please be kind to each other and be safe. Thanks. Bye.